to Beyond the Ring, a podcast that covers all things in the stock show industry from the informative to the insane, starring Ryan Rash.
I think some of you people are extremely lucky that I am terrified of prison.
And Dale Hummel.
It is not recommended to send cash in the mail, but voting by mail is all good.
Now on with the show.
Welcome to Beyond the Ring. This is Dale Hummel alongside co-star Ryan Rash.
What is up, my people?
It has been an interesting week.
Dale, it ain't been interesting for you. You've been out there camping.
I have been camping. We usually go, the closest we get, my family that is, and my wife and kids love to go camping. The closest we usually get to camping is we will stay down at State Fair for an extra week after the shows are done. And
that's not camping.
It's not camping, but you are in an RV, and it's kind of like camping. Camping with a lot of fair food, I guess. But we did come down to Lake Shelbyville, about 2 or 3 hours south of where we live, and I do have a short story. Our children and my wife are pretty excited about.
You do realize none of your short stories are ever short.
Well, this one's pretty short, I think.
Okay.
So we brought a French Bulldog puppy along with us. They voted to bring the puppy along, and that's fine. She's never been away from home overnight, but she's doing okay. So we get down there the first night. Everything's going fine. The next morning, we had a short discussion that maybe the dog has not gone to the bathroom yet and doesn't seem seriously ill, but noticeably hasn't gone to the bathroom. Later that day, we decide the kids want to go in and get ice cream at a local town nearby where we're camping. So we get in the truck and get the puppy in there, and we head to get ice cream. I pull into the parking lot, and the puppy's on my wife's lap, and I'm driving, and it hops over the console onto my lap to kind of look out the window like dogs like to do. And just about as quick as she gets onto my lap, I hear my wife say she's peeing. And shortly after she says that, I feel this very warm sensation over my lap. No, it may be funny, but it was a miserable experience.
Because a puppy peed on you.
Well, I'm trying. As she's peeing, I go ahead and put my hand under her to try to catch the pee, thinking this is going to solve it from getting all over me, and then you're overflowing in your hand. Where do you go with pee? Nowhere to go with pee. It is a problem. And I would say about 30 seconds after that warm sensation, it turns cold and wet, and you have these longer sports shorts on that fortunately dry fairly easy, but they're sticking to your leg.
You had on shorts?
I had on shorts. First time probably all year.
Oh, Lord, I bet them legs are just as white as ivory tusk on an elephant.
No, they're very, very red now. We had a little bit of a pontoon boat outing this morning. They're very red. So I'm sitting there in wet shorts, and they're wanting to go inside to get ice cream, all the above. And I can't explain to you. Just think about when came out of the water or the swimming pool or whatever, and you're in those wet shorts. It's a bad feeling. And knowing that it's dog urine, it's a little worse. So my thoughts are, okay, we've got to go back to the campgrounds. I'm going to go ahead and take these shorts off that dry fairly easy. My wife decides that she can hang them out the window and put the window up so they dry on the way back. My youngest daughter is mortified, just embarrassed as you can be because we're driving down the road with my sports shorts hanging out the window.
Why would you drive down the road with your shorts flapping in the wind? Why
would you leave those wet dog urine shorts on?
I said, I'm fine with you taking them off. Don't stick them out the window like Beverly Hillbillies.
You've got to dry them so I can put them back on to get to the camper.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
Anyway, my daughter's embarrassed. I don't think she's probably going to approve of me discussing it today, but it was a very interesting experience. Very, very interesting experience.
Your children need a shrink who wants a challenge.
That's possible. Very possible. Now, my younger son, he didn't affect him at all. He thought it was a brilliant idea. Let's get them dry so we can put them back on and make use of them later.
Okay, hold on. This first off, this story is not short. Second, it's terrible. But
it was terrible. You're right. It was terrible.
Dog-soaked urine shorts back on. After they're
no longer. They're no longer soaked. They're perfectly dry after about 10 minutes of driving.
They still have dog urine on them,
but it's dry and it feels much better than wet. What would you suggest? I walked through the campground in my underwear.
To the people that are listening to this, I am so sorry that you have been exposed to this story.
Did you have anything interesting this week?
Oh, well, it doesn't take much to top that. But next, there's more. So I have been in Ohio judging a 4-day all species expo. And the first day, we had goats, which normal deal. We have showmanship, and then we had the market show, and then we had some, does after, and everything's going along just swimmingly. And so they start another show kind of in the makeup arena, and it's like dairy and pygmy goats, which is fine. That's ladies out there sorting them and whatever. Well, that's short-lived, and so then I see them moving all of these things into the makeup arena. And we're talking about like a plastic baby pool, a seesaw, a lamb or goat trim stand, some construction cones, all these various and sundry things. And I'm like, what in the hell is going on over here? They had a goat agility obstacle course, which I have never seen this. Now that I have talked to people on Snap and various other social medias, I guess this is a thing. And they also had like saddlebags on their goats. And so you're supposed to collect items as you go through the obstacle course, and I guess you put them in the saddlebags. There was a score sheet for this, by the way.
Did you declare a champion?
I did not judge the goat agility obstacle course.
Why?
That was not me. Well, first off, because I only do things I'm good at, and since I have no prior knowledge or experience with goat agility, like I'm sure you do, Del Hummel, I would not have been a good one to judge it because I know nothing about it. Thank Lord. Anyhow, I didn't stick around for a lot of it, but this one small child has this goat, and the goat is not going into the baby pool. By the way, there's no water in the baby pool. It's just the baby pool. This goat ain't having it. I mean, she is tugging and pulling, and like, it's just not going to happen. So she picks this goat up and literally chunks it into the baby pool.
It works. Is it legal?
I really wanted to ask if you got points for chunking the goat into the baby pool, or did you get points subtracted? But I did not. But the moral and the point of this story is, Del Hummel, Hummel Livestock will no longer sell a goat off your compound until it has passed a goat agility contest. I am stating this to our fans and our listeners. If you buy a Hummel Livestock goat, he is ready, or she is ready to place in the goat agility contest, because that is going to be a thing from here on out, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to see to it. I got a copy of that score sheet. We are going to do it.
On the next online sale, I'll make sure to include that in the comments if I think they'll adapt to goat
They have
agility.
to at least have a passing score of a C or better.
Or they're not allowed to sell.
Absolutely.
There's probably people out there that really may not want to partake in the goat agility.
I do not care. You are starting to be the leader in the goat world. You have to have your animals adaptable to all the competitions.
You would assume those that can get through the agility course probably would get around the ring pretty well.
They got to be flexible.
I'm assuming they do well. Let's move on to current events.
You wouldn't know anything about current events. You've been out there camping, Troop Beverly Hills.
That's where I'm going. Ryan is going to have to carry us a little bit. I know a little bit about mail-in ballots and the Postal Service, but outside of that,
why don't you tell us about your mail-in ballots, sir?
Well, it appears as though it's making the mainstream media. It's on Fox. There's a lot of talk about mail-in ballots. They concern me. If it's a true absentee ballot where there's verification, perfectly fine with it. Another form of mail-in ballot that would be similar to an absentee ballot where there is some form of verification, I'm okay with that. It appears as though President Trump has replaced the Postmaster General recently, and he wants this gentleman to come through and revamp the United States Postal Service, which is needed to be done. 13 consecutive years they have been running in the red. In 2019, the United States Postal Service lost $8.8 billion. So it needs to be done. Obviously,
They're not very good at their job. either.
No, it's a problem. And you know what's happening? We're subsidizing this as taxpayers, which I'm okay with subsidizing certain things, but I'd prefer they stand on their own feet and they get the job done and they can make the financial commitments work. So when we're subsidizing this, think about the companies like Amazon. Think about Beyond the Ring. When we're shipping out gear, we have a lower rate because our tax dollars, we're taking advantage of a subsidy. We're taking a handout, Ryan, when we ship out Beyond the Ring gear. It's not fair to that average consumer.
Well, since I still ain't seen any money from the Beyond the Ring gear, I'm going to take the handout right now. But anyhow.
So with that, Trump is under a lot of criticism. What they've decided to do, the Postmaster General is going to hold off on any changes until after the election. This includes all retail hours will not change. The processing equipment and blue collection boxes will remain in place. And there will be no mail processing facilities that close. So I'm assuming he's gonna gut this down and make it much more efficient and hopefully rebuild it bigger and better. If that doesn't happen, they're gonna have to raise postal rates to get it to a point where it actually pays for itself. So if that happens, I strongly suggest if you're looking at investments, FedEx, UPS, if the postal rates go up, their business is going to continue to grow. So right now, I think Trump made a good move on encouraging the Postmaster General to hold off until after the election. Nancy Pelosi called everybody in over this. It's a mess, but I can assure you at this point, I don't know if it was motivated to stop mail-in ballots. I know it needed to be done. Maybe it didn't need to be done at this time because of the criticism that came with it. But at this point, there's nothing that's going to change until after the election. And at that point, let's hope our COVID numbers and the perception in the mainstream media goes away. Let's hope a lot of things change after the election. With that said, I have missed the Democrat National Convention last 2 days.
See, you
Ryan
just
is going
can't
to
own the floor on this topic and not let me commentate and give my opinion.
Have at it.
He's trying to cut me off here. So this is what I got to say. First off, I don't know if all U.S. postal people work like the ones in Crockett. I'm assuming no, but people contact me on social media all the time. They're like, we'd like to send you a picture of a daughter at the backdrop. If we mail it to you, will you sign it and mail it back? And I tell them all the time, I would be glad to, but you are taking your life in your own hands because I'm telling you, Pony Express goes faster than the mail at Gay Hill. That's just all there is to that.
I'm guessing Pony Express went through Crockett, Texas at one time.
Oh, I'm sure it stayed over the same place Davy Crockett stayed on its way to the Alamo. But anyway, so like I said, I don't know if I'm assuming that Crockett is just one example of a minor example of how it doesn't work very well, because if the whole postal service worked like that, it would not be in existence at all. But the other thing is, I can tell you one of the reasons that they have been operating in the red for 13 years, or however many years you said. It's called email.
That may have something to do with it. There's no question.
How can you not figure that out, sir? That probably cut out at least half or better of the communication that was run through the post office. That's at least half their income.
I think emails cause them to lose less money. When you think about, I don't know what a stamp costs, 30, 40 cents. They're going to deliver 2 or 3 letters to my house out in the middle of nowhere every day. You think they can justify driving out there for 90 cents? I think email is saving them money because they're handling less and losing less.
I don't know.
It's a mess. It is a mess.
So since you've been out there being camper with the most,
spending time with the family.
You have ignored your responsibility to our listeners and the American people, but that is okay.
I knew you had it covered.
Have got this.
At it.
As most of you know, this week has been the Democratic National Convention. And welcome to the shit show, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I can tell you. I cannot go into all the details because then we would be here forever, and I'm still in Ohio, so I'm going to make this a little brief summary. On the first night, they had all these weird people trying to clap for things, and they didn't cue them in on when to clap, and so there's just a screen of a family that's looking for a sign to do something, or you cheer or clap or whatever. just, I mean, like this was not well thought out. But the first night, the whole purpose and their whole platform the first night was that creepy, sleepy, slow Joe Biden is a decent human being and a good guy, and for those reasons, he should become the president of the United States. There was no talk of policy. There was no discussion of what he was going to do for the American people. It was, he is a good person, so he needs to be the president. John Kasich got on there and bashed Trump, and all I can say for John Kasich and Mitt Romney and those never Trumpers, y'all need to form your own party, call them the Democrats or something, because you don't want to be a Democrat, but you're damn sure not a Republican. Amy Klobuchar, who I used to think when the debates were going on, she was the only one that had any rational thinking process involved or any sense. She has completely bought into this liberal, Democratic, Green New Deal, crazy bullshit that AOC and Bernie have basically forced onto the Democrats, so I'm out on her. To any of you undecided voters or independents out there that are listening to this, which I'm sure there's not, but if there is, go back and listen to Bernard Sanders talk on the first night of the Democratic Convention, because he told you everything that you need to know. He said, in actually these words, maybe not a quote, that this is his agenda that Joe Biden is going to put in place, and laid out all the policies that he ran on that Joe Biden's going to put in place. The only difference he had was in Medicare for all or universal health care. Joe still believes that if you like your plan right now, you should keep it, where Bernie would tell you, screw you, you're out, this is what you're going to do. And then my favorite highlight of night one was Michelle Obama. Her address was pre-recorded, and she got a lot of flack for not mentioning Kamala Harris, whatever her name is, in her address, because she recorded a week before that she got tapped for VP, but they explained all that and it's fine. That woman just lied. I mean, just lied. I could not believe the number of things that she told people that is just absolute false. The one that hit me the most is she blamed Trump. She said that Trump inherited a prospering economy from her husband, and that Trump ruined the economy, and the fact that everybody was out of work is because of Trump and his policies. Now, these are facts, people. I'm going to tell you some facts. During the 8 years of Obama and Slow Joe's administration, they created 11.5 million jobs in 8 years. From May 2020 till the end of July, that is 3 months, Trump created 9.3 million jobs. In 3 months, compared to 8 years, he almost lapped them. That's not all the jobs he created in the first 3 years of his presidency. I was just floored. And then she started that BS that she had with Hillary, when they go low, we go high. Okay, so in the last couple of months, let me tell you what their we go high is. They've rioted, they've looted, they've decided to defund the police, and their latest is when President Trump's brother died, they started the wrong Trump hashtag, because they were saying that the wrong Trump died, that it should be our president instead of his brother. So that's night one, Dale. What are your thoughts, Mr. Camper?
I appreciate the insight and the summary there, but you're getting wound up about this one. I look at all of that as positive. It sounds like a complete train wreck.
I tell you what, I had to move hotels today because I may have done bad things to the TV after night two, which was last night. And
How
But
did night 2
That's
start?
all you have to say is that that's great.
Oh, I didn't get to watch it. I get your summary, and I appreciate it. I'm more excited what a train wreck night 2 was.
Oh, night 2, disaster.
I
So-
particularly enjoy the beginning that you told me earlier.
So the start of night 2 is AOC in all her grandeur and glory sitting there, and they gave her 1 minute to speak. They gave John Kasich, who is a former Republican governor
Wait.
from Ohio, 8 minutes. They gave AOC 1 minute.
AOC had 1 minute, and she was the lead person.
She was the lead person. She had 1 minute to speak.
Did you suspect they were nervous about what she's going to say?
I have no idea. The whole entire squad, I think, gets a sum total of 4 minutes. I think they each got 1 minute each. But anyhow, she starts it out. She talks about all the things that need to happen to turn the United States into her socialist dream that it is. And at the very end, she says, and I would like to nominate Bernard Sanders for president, for the Democratic nomination for president of the United States.
I mean, this could not have been known by the committee coming into it.
I don't know. I was just sitting there like, oh.
I think it's
that's
wonderful.
cool.
Absolutely wonderful.
It was something.
Oh,
So
my. I
then-
can imagine they're just cringing.
I don't. Oh, and she did not mention Joe Biden's name one time. Granted, it was only a minute, but she did not mention Joe Biden's name once. But she did get to nominate Bernard Sanders.
I'm impressed.
Why doesn't he
with it.
go by Bernard? That's so much more impressive than Bernie.
I
I'm gonna
think
call
Bernie
him from-
I think Bernie stuck somewhere along the line.
I'm going to call him Bernard from here on out. But anyhow, so then John Kerry, who is literally the worst Secretary of State in the history of the world. And yes, that means that Hillary Clinton did a better job than him. He gets up there and he bashes Trump's foreign policy for a while and talks some trash. Also, let me remind people that John Kerry is a failed Democratic presidential candidate, like lost by a landslide. So he bashes Trump. Then Colin Powell gets up there and they act like he is a Republican, which at one time, maybe he identified as a Republican. I'm not sure. But I know since like the 90s, he has endorsed every Democratic presidential candidate that there is, just about. And he gets up there and he bashes Trump and says how terrible he is and all this other stuff. Also, our favorite pedophile
Now,
in the
be
world,
nice. Be nice.
Epstein's BFF and airplane buddy and woman predator Bill Clinton gets to talk. At one time, Bill Clinton was probably the most charismatic person in the world. Last night, he was sitting in a chair. There was no life in him. He was extremely hoarse. You couldn't hear him. He didn't have much to say. Anything that you couldn't even pay attention to anything you say because you literally were just looking at him like he might fall over and die at any moment. And Brit Hume, when he was making commentary after Bill Clinton got done, he shared the same thoughts that I had. And he literally said that there was nothing left but the shell of the former man that he was. And so that was really sad. Then we had Dr. Jill Biden. And I think she is probably a very nice, intelligent, graceful woman. But she has no choice in this matter. She has to do this. This is her husband. He's ran for president, 32 times? And they're finally got him this far. So she has to go out there and give it all she got. So it starts out and she basically says that the classrooms are empty and kids are not at school because of Trump. If that man has said one time, he has said 1,000,000 times that he is adamant that kids have to be back in school. Adamant on it. She continues on, and this was the low point for me. she talked about their son's death to cancer. And she exploits that moment into that would make Slow Joe a good president because after their son lost his battle to cancer, Joe pulled their family back together. I don't know a family in America that has not lost someone to some horrific circumstance or a disease, hundreds and millions of things. That does not qualify you for the highest office in the land. But those were her two big talking points. And at the end, here comes Slow Joe out to greet and hug his adoring wife, and they do that, and he puts his arm around her. And if you don't believe me, go to Twitter and watch the video. Dale has not because he's been camping, but puts his arm around her and he says, "Hey everyone, I'm Joe Biden's husband."
It is obviously live. No editing.
Mm-hmm. Well, then he figures out what he said, so he starts coughing to try to figure out what to say next, and then he just says, "I'll see you Thursday." And that was it.
I love it. I'm going to set politics aside. There's no question. I'm conservative. Ryan's conservative. We have our opinions, and that's all you're getting here is our opinions. But let's set that aside. And if you were to try to be as independent thinking as you can and just analyze some of the statements that Joe has made, I am very concerned that he truly is slipping, more than just slipping. He's losing it. And we should be concerned because there's a large portion of our population that simply doesn't see it or ignores it, chooses to ignore it.
This is a hot-ass mess. And so, like I said, I don't know what's going to happen the rest of the week. It'll be interesting to see. I can't wait to see if Slow Joe's acceptance speech is recorded or if it's live. If it is recorded, that is a bitch-ass move, in my opinion. But
well, I don't think he can get through a live one, Ryan.
Well,
I really
sure
don't believe he
That's
can.
Still a bitch-ass move. But the only thing that I hope is that the Republicans are taking notes and they are tweaking and changing because it's not going to take much to be better than this hot-ass mess that I've been watching this week. But if they go and knock it out of the park, it'll be a disaster for the Dems. Do you know what they talked about the most last night and this morning about the Democratic national debate? When they nominated Slow Joe, they went to all of the different states and had somebody live or a couple people there live that said, I'm so-and-so from Texas, and we proudly give X number of votes to Joe Biden for president of the United States. And the most compliments and the thing they talked about the most is how they thought that was really cool because there was literally nothing else to compliment on. They thought that the people from Rhode Island that had the plate of calamari, that was just great. I was like, this is happening. Y'all talking about calamari. Okay.
I love it. It's a good thing I didn't watch the convention the last 2 nights. Or you know what? We would have not had time for an episode topic.
Oh, I know.
Well, let's move on to that. Our episode focus this time, and we will talk more about both conventions, and Ryan and I have even visited. We're probably going to, so we don't cut in too deep into the episode's focus, we're going to do a bonus episode, an extra one just on the 2 conventions, breaking them down, analyzing, that will have nothing to do with anything but politics. So many of you can tune it out. Others may jump on board and enjoy it. But we'll try to separate that so it doesn't run too long into what we're doing here with our episode focus.
And then when we get done with that bonus episode, the gay's going to have an episode all by himself where I'm just going to tell you how it really happens. Anyway.
Where there's no editing, no me reeling him back in. 0. Okay, today we're going to talk about service after the sale. And there are a lot of stock show families, stock show kids out there that are either just getting started, maybe switching from one species to another. I think there's a big void in guidance for a lot of families out there. And Ryan wanted to visit a little bit about service after the sale, and we can take this a lot of different directions. But somehow need to get more information more readily available to the stock show families.
I completely agree, and I thought it was an important topic to bring up because depending, again, on your level of knowledge, your level of experience, and, there are families that have been doing this for 4 generations and that many kids, and now they have great-grandkids doing this, and so the things that they need after they purchase an animal compared to the first year family is way, way different. And so I think that as livestock show consumers, you have to realize what you need from the breeder or the broker that you are purchasing that animal from, and that needs to go into your thought process and where you select that animal and get that animal from, because buying a good one is one thing. Keeping that one good and making it better and getting it to the end is a whole nother.
I think there's no question. And a lot of times if you're new to this business and your child is just getting started, you think you can come in and buy that great one and it's just going to go on and be great all its life. And there's nothing further from the truth. It takes a lot of work and effort to keep it where it is or make it better. And a lot of times that can come from the breeder, as Ryan talked about, or we can get it through the broker, the person that maybe has purchased this from the breeder earlier and is reselling it or rehoming to whoever family or some of their families that they want to work with. But those are 2 excellent sources, but we need to realize that not every breeder and not every broker has the time or is going to dedicate the time to walk the families through everything. And we just need to distinguish the difference between some of those. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Those breeders and or brokers need to decide, okay, I'm going to be at this level of customer service and I need to make it very clear to my customers. I'm either going to answer every question they have, try to get to their targeted show and help them in any manner we can, or you're simply buying the animal and you're on your own or somewhere in between. But I think it's important for the stock show families to realize where that is, and it's important to visit with that breeder or broker and just know what those expectations are. If you're getting absolute full service from beginning to end, you're going to pay more for it. It's part of it. It's just there's going to be more of a demand. It is. If you feel comfortable where you don't need any of that service, you can go to the Walmart type breeder or broker that I've got one for sale. It's yours. Have fun. Good luck. I'll stand at the backdrop or help you out at that last show if I'm there. And there's nothing wrong with any of those scenarios. We just need to identify as a stock show family how much assistance you would like or need, and then communicate with that person, whether it be a broker and or a breeder, what amount of customer service are you willing to give or what do you have time for? Because it does become very time limiting. And I can use my personal example, and we've chosen as Hummel Livestock, and I don't want to make it about that at all. And I told Ryan going into this episode, I want to try to avoid that, but I don't mind bringing in, here's an example that we're probably providing or we're trying to provide as much customer service as we can, whether it's myself, our manager, Craig, or even my daughter, Tara, whether it's on health protocols, feeding, showmanship, an exercise program, hydration before the show, clipping, fitting, all of those things, we're going to do whatever we can to assist. That may be answering 3 texts a day. It may mean a phone call every other day. It may mean a FaceTime to work on showmanship or trying to get to that targeted show or possibly a farm visit prior to your targeted show, whatever we can work in. And I'm not going to say that we get to everybody's home that buys a goat and or all of their shows, but we're darn sure going to answer those texts and answer those phone calls and help guide you. And that's part of it. And we're selling a premium product, and part of that premium product is the customer service along with what we'd assume to be the quality of that animal. So it's important. And there's other sources of information you can go to beyond your breeder and broker. Some ag teachers are going to be excellent in that area if they grew up showing livestock. Some of the extension agents or 4-H leaders are going to be fine. There's going to be others that have had zero experience in that. Family members obviously can guide you, friends in the swine industry or the swine show ring. A lot of the feed reps are there to help, especially with the feeding protocols. So there's a lot of directions we can take this, but I don't know how I can make it any more clear. You need to decide what that is going into the project for that year. Ryan, tell us a little bit about on the cattle side from I guess more from a broker standpoint, what variations we're looking at.
Well, I think, like you were explaining, I think this is more a responsibility of each individual family than it is the various people that are out there selling these animals in terms of knowing what you need. Because, again, there are people that this is all they do. This is their sole source of income, their livelihood. And so for people like that, they're going to have more time and they're going to be able to answer more calls, take more texts, go to more shows, and, do those type of things. There are other people that are still very good in this business and sell great animals, but they have another job that's 9 to 5, and their wife or their brother that they're in the business with may have another, they all do other things beyond that. So then their pool of time that they can devote to answering those things is more limited. So again, you need to be honest with yourself. How much guidance, how much direction do I have to have? And when you can do that, then you will know where more likely you are going to be successful in terms of going towards and buying that animal. Again, there is every type of breeder and broker out there in the cattle business there is. Again, I can speak for what I did. How I ran SBCC is I was kind of like an order buyer. People came to me, they said, hey, we have X number of dollars to spend. We want this many head, or we want to steer for this show. I would ask them, does it have to be a certain breed? Do you have some breeds in mind? I always told them the more freedom you give me, the better off I can be, because the more limitations you put on those things, we only want to go to Houston and we only want to, Shorthorn, and, the more limits you put on you're limiting the pool in terms of finding things. But I was like an order buyer. They gave me an order. They gave me a dollar figure. I would go out. I would find these cattle. I would take videos. I would send pictures. And if they were comfortable with me just pulling the trigger after they saw that animal, we did that. Some of them would come to where I was the next day or the next week and look at that animal themselves and, decide on whether they wanted that or not. And that didn't offend me at all. If I was spending that much money on animals, I would want to see them for myself. So that's how we worked in the buying process. After that, I always had people working for me full time, pretty much. I'm not going to say that I returned every call, but somebody did, or text, got a lot of videos, looked at them. We answered a lot of feeding questions. One of the things that we always did is we promoted going to shows a lot. And so, again, going to shows in the summer, if you're going to be competitive, those cattle have to be fresh clipped. A lot of those shows back then, they were fit. So all those things come into it, and I never go to lose. So when we would go to a show, it wouldn't matter if there was just one kid there that had my cattle or there was 15. What I would do is figure out who was going to the show, how many guys I needed to get those things clipped, get them ready, get them presented to the best of their ability. I would buy the supplies from the show supply trailer, and at the end of the day, I would take what it cost me in terms of the labor for the guys, not their hotel rooms, not their meals or anything like that, what their daily wage was, what the expense of the supplies were. I would add it up and divide it by the number of head that we had at that show. And if you had 3, you paid me this number times 3. If you had 5, is that 5? If you had 1, 1. So that way, at least the labor cost for the guys getting them ready and the supplies were done. And that's all I ever asked them to pay.
That works. And your clients knew this up front. This is exactly where you were.
Yep. That was standard protocol going to a show. And
I think once you have a client and they understand that, it works out pretty simple. I'm going to speak also from personal experience, when we first started selling show goats, I did not get a lot of people asking, how much help are you going to give me if I buy this goat? It just wasn't asked. I think over the years, it's evolved and maybe the perception or assumed that we are going to provide as much customer service as we physically can. But I still don't get a lot of people asking, hey, can I text you every day, or what am I going to get? When they buy one, I send out I email an entire management protocol that explains everything I can as best possible without being right there with the animal. But we also encourage them to call, to text, to do whatever. We'll sell some goats and never hear from that person again, never hear if it did well or poor or any of the above. We'll sell others and people will touch base almost daily. But I guess what I'm getting at, and Ryan threw it out there so well, that it is the personal responsibility of that family or that exhibitor, that person that is purchasing that project, to maybe go ahead and I don't think this is happening enough, ask that breeder or that broker or whoever's selling that animal, what can I expect in terms of customer service? And not in a negative way. And in some situations, it's going to be none, and others, it's going to be a great deal. But I think that needs to be addressed to get the best possible experience for that family. And not only that, I would hope that that breeder and or broker, if given the opportunity, just like Ryan did, what are your expectations? Are you going to the county fair that Ryan just judged in Ohio and wanting to win the goat agility competition? Are you going to Kansas City and want to win the Market Lamb show? What are your expectations? And then that breeder and or broker can make recommendations to you. And those may be way out of your budget. They may fit in there, but at least they're giving you their honest opinion that this is where you need to be if you're going to try to meet those expectations.
Yeah, when you go to the various places to look at these animals, no matter what species it is, again, being honest, I just can't tell you how important it is. Because if those people that are there trying to sell those animals don't know what you want or what you need, and you're not being 100% honest with them about that, then they can't help you as much as they can. Very few times did people come up to me when they said, hey, we would like to get one from you. Tell us how it works with you. You know, most of those families, they were looking to win a breed or at least win a class at a major show. And so that was kind of the clientele that I ran with. But, you know, I would say, I want to know, do you for sure want a breed champion? Do you want to try to win the whole show? Do you want to win a class, or do you want a brand? Because there's differences in all of those levels, and I can't guarantee those results. But as long as I knew what you wanted, then I could go from there. Another thing is, especially on these first-year families or young families, you're going to want your kid to go to shows. You need to ask, do you go to a lot of jackpot shows? A lot of people don't. They'll go to the majors, and I don't know many people that, you know, do this and sell animals that don't show up at the state fair or the major shows and aren't willing to help. But there's a bunch of people that they farm, they have other jobs, and they just don't make it to a bunch of jackpot shows. That's a question you need to ask. And if they don't go, do they have somebody that's available? Can you bring them back to their house to get them ready before the show and then pick them up and go to the jackpot show? All of these things are vital pieces of information that you need to find out and you need to ask, so you can ensure that you're not only buying from the right place, but that person knows what you expect. Because it's a two-way street. It's not just all on the people selling the animals, and it's not all on you either. It's a two-way street, and an open line of communication and honesty is the only way that's going to flow effectively.
No, and I want to circle all the way back around and just take right off of that honesty part. Every year we're further into this. If and sometimes people will buy off our online sales, and I'll never have heard from them. They won't stop and touch base. They just buy off of the picture and sometimes get along well, and other times probably buying one that took a great picture and wasn't as good, or vice versa. Maybe took a poorer picture and they got lucky and he's actually better than what the picture appeared. But I know that if I can get in communication with that family or that exhibitor or that parent who's ever taking the initiative to visit with me or Craig or one of our team members, we will ask more questions. Once we ask what their expectations are, we can even go a little bit further. And the more you communicate to them, the better. For example, do you have a treadmill? Do you have a track? What methods are there available to exercise? What feed resources or feed do you have available in your area? What facility are you going to be able to separate these to feed them? The more information that breeder or broker has, the better they can assist you. And I think I talked about this big void in terms of information getting to these stock show families, and they don't know where to go to get it. And it's hard to come by, especially good, knowledgeable material that's going to make them better each and every year. And part of it is just experience and time and paying your dues and all of those things that contribute to success. But it is critical. The more information you can give that broker or breeder or that person you're buying from to help guide you. And for the most part, they're going to be pretty honest with you that, yeah, this one can do it or no, it can't, especially when you communicate with them. If I flip through a dozen online sales, we're talking from the very best breeders to some of the lesser breeders in terms of quality of stock. And I will notice that in those write-ups, there may be 12 animals in that sale, and each and every one of them is capable of winning a national show. Guess what, Ryan?
Not the case.
No. So if they're going to be, I feel like those breeders are more apt to give you a very honest opinion if you reach out and communicate with them in person. Make that personal connection, and I think it's going to be much better for both parties. And it's just about communication. We can, as a breeder and or a broker, we can do a lot more to hopefully meet your expectations or that project meets your expectations. Lots of variables come in, but we just have to do the best we can.
And then another thing that, again, I think these families need to realize, everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Some people, in terms of what they can provide for you after the sale, they're great at clipping those animals or getting them ready for a show, but maybe they're not as good in terms of telling you how to feed, stuff like that. Again, you got to ask those questions. You got to, I mean, no one's going to say, no, I don't know how to feed one, but you just say, if you could give me your top 3 best qualities in terms of after I take this animal home, what are the best 3 things that you can do to help me and my kid be successful? They're going to list those for you, and that's all they got to say. And if there's something that's not there or that's not brought up, that's probably a good indication that that's not in their comfort zone or they're not the best in that particular area. Not saying they're unknowledgeable, but there are people that are more knowledgeable than others in everything in life, and that goes with livestock shows and the different areas and attributes that it takes to get one around.
Oh, and Ryan, the further we get into this, the more passionate I become, because we're talking about buying a good one and trying to keep it a good one or make it better. Well, guess what? That is a part of the puzzle. But what we're talking about right here, gaining knowledge and understanding how to do things better and how to proceed each year and do a better job feeding those livestock, managing those livestock, everything that's involved to creating success and creating kids that understand how to do things better and become more and more competitive. This is 60, 70, 80% of it is having access to that knowledge and even maybe some hands-on. And we have to realize that sometimes we'll have kids that are involved in 2 different sports or 3 different sports, and the family's busy working, and maybe there's only 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes at night they can dedicate to those show animals. And you know what? If we know this, that helps us guide them to more realistic goals. So there's so many factors that come into play, and I wish that, and this is Ryan, I appreciate you pushing us into this episode, because I cannot emphasize enough that no matter what you do, if you haven't been doing this a very long time and have a lot of experience and success with that experience, gathering knowledge and having access to that assistance is going to make or break that project.
Everyone's got to start with a good one. And then after that, it still takes a village and a whole lot of work and elbow grease and a little bit of luck, no matter what your goal is. That's one of those things that I think people forget. They they go out and they find this one and they love it and they think it's going to win and they write that big check because, I mean, let's be honest, they're all big checks these days to some degree. And they think, all right, the big part of it's over. We found it. That's only the beginning. And it's literally, at least in my opinion, why it's important, it's probably the least important part of it all because there's lots of good ones out there to start with. It's what happens from that point when you load that one in the trailer and get it home after that. That's going to make the big differences, in my opinion. And another thing, and I know we're kind of jumping around here, but, you know, when you ask these people about shows or about services or, you know, can you help me with feeding and stuff like that? This was something that I did, and I had to learn not to do it because I just, you know, we'd sit there and we'd be talking and we're like, hey, we plan on going to that show middle of May. If y'all want to go, you know, let me know. And so they'd pick up their calf and go home and, you know, maybe get a couple texts from them. Month or so's gone by. We get to that show and there's that family and that calf. I mean, yes, I said we're planning on going to this show in Cameron, Texas in May. Just so you know, you've got to communicate, whether it's a jackpot show or a major show, in advance. Yes, we still want to go to that show. What do we need to do to get ready? Do we need to bring this calf to you before? Do you need to send somebody here to get it clipped? And even at a major, what you don't understand, at those major shows and state fairs, that person may have 50 head there that they have to check on and tend to. So unless you alert that person, say, hey, I'm here, row B, orange, stall 356. I'm going to be here all day. Tell me when you can be here and we can look at this thing and you tell me what I need to do. You've got to be proactive and it can't be a last minute thing because, again, even though everybody thinks that you're the most special customer, everybody thinks they're the most special customer, and everyone that does this has multiple customers.
No, and that's dead on, Ryan. And I get no less than 20 people contacting me, usually via text a day, asking some type of question about their project. And I encourage that and I want that. If I can't answer that, we'll certainly source it out to somebody that can. But you need to realize that, in my opinion, I can't emphasize more. I'll be at a Texas major and I have 5 different families there or however many. And then all of a sudden I see another go by that we sold that I haven't had any contact with that person, which is fine. If they want to take care of their project, they feel very comfortable doing it, all of that's good. But if you want us to assist in any manner or stop over and check on that one in terms of body fill or hydration or anything whatsoever, just reach out, communicate. Ryan's communication statement there is huge. And I would also recommend, some of us have poor memories, particularly me. Ryan, he's a little better than that. But if you put it in a text, you're in row J, pin 352 red. That's in a text. I'm going to come around and find you, or our manager's going to come around and find you. Even communication with questions. I know sometimes we can't put everything into a text, but that's going to give us a history and a record that we can thumb through and go back and say, okay, you were feeding X amount per feeding or whatever the topic might be on. It's good to run through that text and refresh our memory. And I tell people that I'm going to forget most things. Don't be afraid to shoot me a text reminder. I don't take offense to it. It's just part of it, and I actually appreciate it. But if we can emphasize one thing, figure out as a family how much assistance you think you need, ask those questions to that breeder or broker, and then post-sale, communicate at whatever level that you had agreed upon or whatever level of service that particular person is willing to give you. And it's going to go so much better. And unfortunately, we're trying to build kids into better people. We're teaching them how to do a better job and succeed and compete at the highest levels. It's building that person, and part of building that person is just not buying a good one, but rather resourcing everything you need to figure out how to do it better.
Amen, and God bless Trump.
Absolutely. We're going to add a third segment, and we're going to move on to that if it's okay with Ryan. We're going to take a few question and answers off of our social media for each episode, and we'll even send out some gear to some of those that we use. But before we get into that, I did have one topic I forgot to talk about. I had several people text me about this. In the sheep show ring, we went through showmanship last week, and I probably need to ask Ryan about this. Maybe you'll have two totally different opinions. Some showmen are getting very extreme in terms of their body position and how they're trying to get these sheep shown. I'm perfectly fine with doing whatever you can to make that animal look its best. But at times when you're getting way out there extreme, you're maybe drawing a whole lot more attention to yourself than what the animal is getting. I don't know how better to put that. I'm not trying to be negative towards certain showmanship styles, but if we can do it in a more natural sense, and Ryan has talked about it so many times, let's make it look easy. And I would just assume I don't even see the showman. Everything on that animal is perfect. The showman doesn't exist. Ryan, where are you at on that one?
I'm kind of in. I'm kind of out.
That's okay.
Which I think what you're trying to say, and you just don't want to say it, is that the sheep showmen are getting so low to the ground and their legs so far out there that it looks like they're in yoga instead of showing a sheep. I think that's what you're getting at.
That's much better put than I stated it. Much better.
Now that I know exactly what you're talking about, extreme body, whatever, I was like, we're back to goat agility. But I get what you're saying there. And I do think that at times that can get a little much and get a little distracting. For me, the one thing that I notice sometimes even more than that, to be honest, more than they're out there doing the yoga poses, is they do that and then they want to like turn their head upside down.
Exactly.
I'm not picking on girls because y'all all know that I believe 9 times out of 10 a girl is a better showman. But most times girls have ponytails. And so when they do that, that hair flips over and makes it even more exaggerated. And then it's swinging around. And so, yes, I get that. Difference between a good showman and a great showman is great showman make it look effortless. I understand that you have to get low to get that animal to brace into you and all those things. Try to make it look as effortless as possible. And then the other thing, when Dale just said that, he doesn't even want to see the showman, I'm out on that. That I'm definitely out on that. I want you to tell me with your eyes, with your body language, that this one, either you're there to win the showmanship contest, or that is the best sheep, pig, cow, agility, goat, whatever, out there, and you are serious about it. So I like you having style and having a presence, but I get what you're saying. The yoga poses are a little much.
I stand corrected. I'm with you on that look and so forth. I guess I don't want to see you putting extreme effort with your body to try to get that animal stuck. Even if it takes extreme effort, let's hide it, make it look effortless, but give me that competitive look. And absolutely, I'm completely in. Okay, we cleared up our showmanship, what we forgot last week. Question and answer, and I'm going to butcher some of these names, and I'm going to apologize in advance. We have Renee Ossier. Her question on our social media post, Dale and Ryan, what is one of your most memorable animals and why? Ryan, I'm going to throw that right to you. I can imagine you've had several of them.
Well, I can take this answer so many different ways. And again, I know we're running long already, but my favorite animal that I ever showed was a Hereford steer named Benny that won the Arizona National. And just because that calf was amazing for a Hereford, he won a whole lot of shows overall, but he had the coolest personality, and we were undefeated for an entire year in showmanship together, wherever we went. And so we had a real big bond. So that was my favorite animal or memorable animal in terms of the steers that I showed. I also had a heifer named Gypsy that won every major show in the country. So she was pretty special. In terms of ones that I sold, I would have to say Peyton Herzog's Shorthorn that won the state fair is probably the one that sticks in my memory the most, and it's for a variety of reasons, not only was he real good, and obviously he had to be because he won in 2013, and, Shorthorns weren't just raking in the big banners back then, but so he was physically very special, a very cool steer, but that was the first steer that the Herzog family ever let me select for them that they never saw him till he showed up at the barn. And I knew right then that we had got to that point where I was now part of their family, that they trusted me that much. And then just the best animal that I've ever judged in a ring, I would have to say it was JoJo, the Charlet, at the Tulsa State Fair of the Johnson family. She was an incredible female, and she won all year long. She won as a calf. She won as in the fall, and then she won all the way through Denver and OYE. But I just don't know if I never saw her physically look as good as she did that week in Tulsa. And I'll never forget, she comes in and she wins her class, and I go to talk to Mike, and I don't remember what the first thing I said was, but I said, this one could walk through the deepest, darkest forest, knock down every single tree, whip the meanest, maddest grizzly bear, and come out the other end looking like a lady. And so if you don't know what that means, ladies and gentlemen, I don't like this heifer. I love this heifer. So she was pretty special. So those are my memorable ones in different facets for me.
And this is going to sound bad, but you're going to see some similarities here. And Ryan talked about several that had success. And Ryan and I are very, very competitive, and it holds true for me. I think about those animals that we've raised that have won national shows, whether it was for a client or even with my own children showing them. And 3 of my kids have won the North American Market Weather Show. Each of those weathers were pretty special. That was the first national show we won in, I believe, 2013 with my daughter, Tara. My youngest daughter won it a few years later with a goat named Z that we actually kept in our garage for about a month just to get him to calm down and acclimate away from others. And it starts developing some personality and really becomes pretty interesting at times. And if I think back to one that really sticks in my mind, the first year my daughter Tara showed a steer, she showed an Angus steer, ends up being the grand champion Land O'Lincoln steer at the Illinois State Fair. This, again, was her first year, and she put everything she had into this calf in terms of doing everything she possibly could correctly. Her heart and soul went into it, and when she was selected champion that evening, you could just feel the emotions. And those things really resonate and stick in your mind, and it's pretty special. And we do this podcast and try to get information out there to the youth, and just like what we're talking about today, access that knowledge, and it's going to make a big difference. But when you can put yourself in those positions, and unfortunately there's a very small percentage of the people showing livestock are ever going to win a state fair or a national show, but that's kind of the goal. Let's go win that county fair. Let's win those jackpot shows and keep moving up. And when we continue to strive for that, we can make ourselves better. But there's some of those animals that really stick in your mind, and it is some of the ones that have had success.
Also, Dale is lying. The most memorable animal that he has ever had is the paint goat that won the Arizona National last year. And the reason it's the most memorable animal ever is the Gay used it to win its very first show, and the rest is history, ladies and gentlemen.
The Gay did discover that goat, and I do. That is a memorable one. You're right. That's one that I probably liked as well as any of them that we've raised. So yeah, that definitely fits in there. We have another question. Barbie Starr, you guys have talked about nominations for the Texas Majors and OYE. For those of us that live in the North, what does this mean?
I don't know the exact process for OYE, but I can tell you the exact process for Texas. And then Dale can probably hit on some of the stuff for OYE. And then they even nominate for shows like Phoenix and Kansas City. Louisville, I don't think there's a nomination process, but there is for Denver as well. But in Texas, regardless of species, we have to take those animals to a designated point in time in our county, and every animal that's going to show at a Texas Major show has to go through what we call the Texas validation process. What that entails is they pull hair, they nose print, they tattoo, and they have a record of that animal, who owns it, where that animal lives. They put an ear tag in it as well. And so they can know exactly where Susie Sugarbaker's calf is supposed to be at all times, because we have a rule that after validation, it has to stay in the home of the exhibitor at all times through the feeding process, unless it's gone to a show or, going to get its hooves trimmed or something like that. And again, so they have a record of where it's supposed to reside. They have the hair. I think we even pull blood, actually. I know we do hair. I know we ear tag. I know we tattoo. And that way they can identify it. If it places at a major show or wins at a major show, they have ways to identify to make sure that's the exact same animal. It's been validated through the process, and they can keep a record of it throughout.
Excellent description, Ryan. It's not much different. We have to nominate for Kansas City and Denver. There's several shows out there that you do nominate for, and it simply is a process to try to determine ownership at a certain time. And for example, Kansas City on the market weather goats, we had to submit hair samples and a scrapie tag by August 15th. And then later here in a few weeks, we'll actually submit our entries and decide which ones that we nominated that we'll actually be taking. But nomination usually occurs at the same time that ownership requirements are put into place. So it's just a process that we go through to try to make sure that the people that are going to be showing those animals actually had those animals purchased and in their possession as best they can check up on those type of things. The next question and answer, this one comes from Cole Eubanks. And I'm going to give this one to you, Ryan. Which show species make the most money? Cattle, lambs, goats, or pigs?
Well, my mother tells me all the time that I'm entirely too honest, but it's got me this far in life, so I'm going to continue with this honesty process. I don't know if any of them make a whole lot of money. I would think that probably the goal for most and the majority of show families is that the goal is to break even or make just a little bit. And I think the odds of that are probably the same in almost every species, because depending on, the more the animals cost, normally the more they bring in the sale at major shows and state fairs. And so I think the chances are about the same in any of those species. More importantly, yes, it is fun to make money, but that is not the main goal here. And I guess for me, if we can just break even or get enough to buy more the next year, then I think you've done a world of good.
Excellent. And I think that there's going to be an occasional animal that does make money, but if we average things out, this is not probably going to be a profitable project. There are going to be parents that will maybe purchase some of these animals for their children and allow them to keep the proceeds as long as they're working at home and doing things that they need to do. So it can build college funds. It can do a lot of things. But if we look at the bottom line, it's probably not going to average out making much money, irregardless of the species. So I may be too honest, Cole, but that's as good as we can give it to you. We appreciate those of you that submitted the questions. Please continue to do so through Facebook. You can private message Beyond the Ring Facebook page, post in the comments, whatever direction that you would like. We'll try to answer a handful of those towards the end of each episode, and it'll actually be its own segment. We have one more thing to finish up with here, Ryan, and that is we put a post up of a picture of somebody in front.
No.
Yes,
you, sir,
yes.
put a post up. I had nothing to do with this. This bitch had nothing to do with any of this. And so let me tell you something, people. Jackass that shares this little podcast with me, he thinks it's funny. Be nice. Nobody was trying to give you the Rona or the Wuhan virus.
I had 2 or 3
Dawn
people said I'd
because
test
she
positive.
felt sorry for me. So one person. Anyhow.
And there was somebody else that knew I was at the California Expo, and I believe they thought maybe.
Anyway, all these people post on his Facebook post, Ryan positive 400 cars, Ryan positive 3 cars, Ryan positive. Let me tell you something. I am a positive and uplifting person, people, but I am not positive for the Wuhan, China virus. Not me.
You may have already been positive and asymptomatic. You don't know that.
If I had been positive and knew that I had the Wuhan, China
No, you didn't.
virus,
Would not have known it. You would have not have known that.
I would not be out there judging shows, exposing people. I am not that way. No, I did not have it. Dale
Then
has
you need
it.
to go get it. You need to go get another antibody test and see where you're
Dale
at. See if
has
you've been
it. He
exposed.
has the Wuhan.
Okay, we will give you the results for this. It was me that took the test. I was actually taking my son through the drive-through test. He's a student at Illinois State University, required or highly recommended to get tested so they can go into in-person classes, which I think is a little bit ridiculous because I dropped him off at his apartment, and just outside the balcony door is the pool in basically 1995 Fort Lauderdale full-blown beach party going on. There was not much social distancing. There were no masks. I don't know. I appreciate the colleges and universities trying to take precautions, but we need to be realistic. This age demographic is not going to stay away from each other. They're not going to social distance. They're probably not going to put masks on in their apartments or at the pool. It just is what it is. And even the test, he came back negative. Well, guess what? He's negative that day. It doesn't mean that tomorrow he's not exposed and positive. I just don't know what value there is there. I'm, in hindsight, a little shocked that I even agreed to take the test, but I'm sitting there in line. The lady comes up to me and says, "Would you like to get a test?" I said, "Well, is it free?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, is it painful?" And she said, "No, you get a Q-tip and shove it up your nose as far as you feel comfortable and give it back to me." I said, "All right, I'll take it."
You do know that Dale is the cheapest man in America, and he cannot refuse free shit. That's the only reason he did it.
There may have been something to that. I don't know. In hindsight, I wouldn't have taken it, but I guess I did just return from California. I'd had a cold, a runny nose, a sneeze. I joke with my family that I think I have the Rona. They're assuring me that I don't. I took the test. There were 3 cars ahead of us, these huge lines that we're talking about. It did not take long to get through 3 cars before we were ready. So my test came back negative.
And it is positive, and now we are shipping him to Wuhan to be a lab rat.
That is incorrect. Dale, negative, 3 cars, hits it. I did not think anybody would come up with the exact 3 categories correctly. 4 people came up with it. We're going to send each of them a Beyond the Ring hat. If they could private message the Beyond the Ring Facebook page with their phone number and address, we will get those shipped out to them.
And let me tell you the funniest part of all this. Mr. Cheapskate now has to give away 4 hats for his free Rona Wuhan China virus test.
So it did cost us a little bit, but I think it was good. It was fun. Jeff Brooks, Melissa Meyer, Madison Lendreth, and Marcy Rim. All 4 had Dale negative 3 cars. Facebook message us, address, phone number. We'll get those out to you. We've had a tremendous response. We mentioned here a couple episodes back that we would include some sponsors and advertising. I appreciate all those businesses and individuals that have reached out to us, and we are open to different ideas and trying to be a little bit selective that we can actually put our personal knowledge and maybe our experiences in with this. So it's been good. Ryan, I've enjoyed this episode. I appreciate you covering the current events at the Democratic National Convention. I look forward to that bonus episode after both conventions are finished. It could be enjoyable.
I'm the most excited. It's going to be great.
It will be entertaining, I'm sure. No question about that. Until next week, be safe.
Y'all come back now, you hear?